Hello, everybody. This is Rick Larsen, and I want to thank everybody for joining the telephone town hall meeting. These telephone town hall discussions are a great way to connect with residents from across the entire district. Normally, we do these in the evening. We thought we'd try something different, do it in the afternoon, and see if that is something we want to continue to do, or if we'll go back to evenings. So if you have some feedback on that later after the call, you can leave that too. But just trying to reach out to as many people as possible in different ways. I look forward to sharing a few thoughts today about Social Security, about Medicare, about the economy, and some things about what I think Congress needs to do this year. But mostly I look forward to hearing your questions and answering them the best way I can. Now, just as a reminder, if at any time you wish to ask a question, dial *3 on your phone, and you'll be transferred to a member of my staff to get set up and ask a question. Well, to start, I just want to note that my number one focus on your behalf is to try to implement a forward-thinking plan for economic growth that works for us in the Pacific Northwest. Through investments in skills and knowledge of people, support for infrastructure, the repair of roads and bridges and highways, support for innovation and research at our universities and education, also that we can maintain our economic leadership in the world. I think that's what most people want. Now, at the core of this is what we can do to create jobs. And, last night in the State of the Union address, the President laid out a vision to create jobs and rebuild this country. I think he was right to emphasize American ingenuity and a new era of American manufacturing as the right path to move forward. This will not only create jobs today, but I think secure the United States global leadership in the future. Now, in the Northwest, transportation means jobs, and a key way to create jobs is to invest in our transportation infrastructure and repairing our roads and bridges and highways. As a member of the Transportation Committee in the House of Representatives, I'm trying to be sure that we get a rather robust surface transportation bill, a bill that local private sector contractors and local private sector engineers continue to tell me is an important step to take to create jobs. I think the single biggest action this Congress can take to save and create jobs in the construction industry is to pass a strong transportation bill. Now, in order to remain competitive in the global economy, we have to improve our domestic infrastructure. That's a sound strategy to promote growth, to promote efficiency, to support increased manufacturing. But to do all that, we obviously need a road, a bridge, highway system, and strong transit systems that support all these efforts. And so that's one thing I'm working on right now is in transportation and getting a strong transportation bill that we in the Northwest and Washington State can take advantage of, help with the repair of roads, bridges, and highways, and to improve our transit systems. One exciting training and education opportunity we have is for veterans who are returning home from Iraq and Afghanistan. Congress recently passed a bill that creates strong incentives for small businesses to hire veterans and provide more training to service members returning home. And we have information on that that we can send out to folks. If you know a small business who's looking to hire people or interested in hiring veterans, please let my office know. We have got some great information that these folks can use to get in contact with some of the agencies that can help connect people to veterans who are looking for work. Once again, if you have a question, press *3, and we'll get you set up for a question. Another aspect of driving jobs is our exports. We in Washington State, about 1 in 3 jobs is reliant on exports. And 95% of the world's consumers, of course, live outside the United States. And so we have an opportunity to grow our export capacity and create jobs, and I'm committed to doing that in the Northwest. We have, in fact, a specific program in my office to connect small businesses in the district with federal and state resources that currently exist that you're already paying for to help these smaller companies who are interested in selling their products into other countries. Now, I want to address Social Security and Medicare. I just want to let folks know that we still need to make sure that Social Security and Medicare remain solvent and that they are guaranteed benefits for this generation and for future generations of seniors. Now, in the 2nd District alone, which runs from about the Canadian border to South Everett, nearly 50% of seniors' household income, comes from Social Security. I understand that folks rely on Social Security's guaranteed benefits for retirement security or to make ends meet, to put food on the table, and to stay in their homes. Now, some in Washington, D.C. have talked about slashing entitlement spending. I do not agree. I think we need to protect these benefits that our seniors have earned. Also, when it comes to Medicare, I oppose turning Medicare into a voucher system. Some have advocated for that. I don't think that is a way to address solvency issues in Medicare. Now, on back to Social Security, one way we can make Social Security stronger is by eliminating the cap on the Social Security tax that applies only to the first $106,800 of someone's annual salary. By lifting that cap, we can ensure the long-term solvency of Social Security. That is a very simple way to do that. Now, before turning to questions, remember *3. If you have any questions, I want to let you know about some of the services that we're offering constituents. First off, I just want to let you know that in the last year, my office and I have responded to more than 50,000 letters and emails from constituents on issues that they're concerned about. More than 50,000 letters that we've sent out to folks to let them know how I feel about certain issues, or just in terms of response to general questions. We started a new program to help families who are on the brink of foreclosure. We work with banks who are participating in one of the several federal programs to help negotiate lower mortgage payments so families can stay in their homes. If you have questions about that, again, my staff can help you specifically. We've assisted hundreds of constituents who've had issues with various federal agencies like the Social Security Administration and the VA, the Veterans Affairs. And on veterans, we've established a Veterans Outreach Program to make sure the needs of the more than 75,000 veterans in the district are being met. So with that in mind, I know we have some questions lined up ready, and again, a reminder just to press *3, and you'll be connected with one of my staff members. And currently, we've got nearly 600 people online. I really appreciate folks being willing to come online and hear a few words and ask your questions. So with that, we'll go back to Brian for the first question. Brian.
Great. Thank you, Rick. And just for anyone joining us now, if you'd like to ask a question, just dial *3, and you'll be connected with a staff member to ask your question. First, we're going to go to Jack and Anacortes. Jack, you are live with Congressman Rick Larsen.
Hi, Congressman Larsen. It's obvious to me, at least, that the administration's economic plan has more to do with smoke, mirrors, and environmentalist rhetoric than it does with jobs. What is your position on the pipeline?
I'm sorry, go ahead. Please rephrase your question.
Yeah, I wanted to know what your position is on the Keystone XL pipeline decision.
Oh, yeah. Frankly, I think that the administration was actually forced into that particular decision on the Keystone pipeline because the permit isn't ready. And you might also know, for folks who are listening, about Keystone XL pipeline, which actually runs through the middle of the country, nowhere near Washington State. The review process actually continues. The permitting process continues for Keystone XL. But I think the administration was generally forced into position saying this thing isn't ready, and so they have to reject it. But you might also know that the work continues on preparing the permit for Keystone XL pipeline. The route might change. Republicans in Nebraska, there are Republican representatives who support it. There's a Republican governor who is opposed to the Keystone XL pipeline in the current route. So it sounds more like this thing is going to come up later. When it is ready to actually be built, as opposed to having the administration be forced into a position. And as far as do I have a position on it, I haven't taken a position on it. I'm really focused on the jobs in our district. We've got issues like Alcoa, the aluminum company, the smelter in Ferndale, great industrial wage jobs, employing over 600 people. And I'm working with them and Bonneville Power Administration to try to get a long-term, affordable electricity contract that is going to keep those jobs there, good-paying jobs there for a long time. I assure you, that is not smoke and mirrors work. I've been working pretty hard with Boeing to help them land the Air Force tanker contract. That's going to mean about 10,000 jobs and a $700 million investment in the Pacific Northwest. Good-paying industrial manufacturing jobs. Nothing smoke and mirrors about that as well. So, my focus has been on the jobs that we can create in the Pacific Northwest. That's why I'm working hard on a transportation bill that will help fund the repair of roads, bridges, and highways. All of these jobs would be construction jobs, good-paying jobs, and nothing smoke and mirrors about that. So, I guess I take issue with the characterization of the Keystone XL decision as a smoke and mirrors, since the administration was forced into making the decision on a permit that, frankly, wasn't ready. But people may differ on that. But I think those are the facts. But thanks a lot.
Thanks, Congressman. Again, just a reminder to all those people just joining the call now, if you'd like to ask a question to the Congressman, just dial *3, and you'll be connected with a member of the staff. Next, we're going to Walter in Mount Vernon. Walter, you're on with Congressman Larsen.
Thank you very much for taking my question. I was listening to the President last night, and he mentioned that the Congress, by law, has the ability to use inside information to buy stocks and bonds, or if you happen to hear about a new drug that's coming out on the market, you can buy stock. Or if you have it's a Treasury meeting, they happen to give you some gloomy information, you can sell off anything you have in your investment. I just wanted to know if you have ever taken advantage of that benefit. Do you think that's a good law to have, that a certain part of our legislative body can take inside information, whereas I can't because it's against the law? And do you also have the ability to pass on that information to me via email or whatever? And if you are opposed to this benefit, are you willing to sponsor a bill today to stop this practice?
Walter, to get to the last part of your question, I am a co-sponsor of what is called the Stock Act. That is the act that would prevent, by law, any member of Congress from taking advantage from any information that they receive to trade, that is, buy or sell stocks in any way, shape, or form. So I am with you on this. I would never, if I knew any information that could be construed as insider information, not only would I never use it, I would never pass it on to you or anyone else. And the third thing I'd say, because it's wrong to do that, the third thing I'd say is, just so the facts are clear, there is no law that allows us to do what you're saying Congress members are allowed to do, but there's no law to prevent it. There are rules in place in Congress that make it a violation. We can be fined. We can be kicked out of Congress if we violate those rules. It is true there's not a law currently to prevent members of Congress from using this information, but there's no law that allows it either. But the important point, I think, Walter, that you're getting at here, and I'm with you on this, and other people who are supportive of it, that we need to pass what is called the Stock Act, S-C-O-C-K, the Stock Act, which would prevent members of Congress from using insider information, what can be construed as insider information, to buy or sell stocks to their advantage. It's wrong to do that. This is a job about public service. A lot of people are cynical about that. I understand that people are cynical about that. That's one reason why we need to pass the Stock Act. Another reason why we need to take corporate money out of politics. And so I'm also a co-sponsor of a new bill that's coming out in the next couple of weeks called the Disclose Act, which would apply disclosure rules to corporations and super PACs, as well as a sponsor of the House version of Senator Bernie Sanders' amendment to overturn the Citizens United decision, the Supreme Court decision that gave political free speech rights to corporations. I think that is wrong, and we need to overturn that as well. It not only gets the corporate money out of politics, it might get some of the cynicism out of politics too.
Thanks, Congressman. Next, we're going to Dolores in Marysville. Dolores, you're on with the Congressman. And just a reminder to everybody else, if you have a question to ask, just dial *3, and you're going to be connected with a member of our staff. Dolores, go ahead.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Dolores?
Yes, Rick. I live in Marysville. I'm 84 years old, and 3 of my 4 children are getting ready to retire within the next 10 to 12 years.
Oh.
Our big concern is Medicare and Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you in your previous remarks about senior citizens. I live in Crystal Tree Village. I'm sure you know where that is.
Sure I do, yeah.
And we rely most of us rely very heavily on our Social Security. A lot of them don't have a pension like my husband has, which we're fortunate.
Yeah. Right.
But my children, what I'm concerned about is some fraud in the SSI portion of Social Security that we have seen. I'm also concerned, and so are they, for my children and future with Social Security and the amount of money that is given back to doctors for Medicare.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
There's a lot of us in our area rely heavily on our Medicare portion for insurance, and doctors are just not taking new Medicare patients.
Right. Well, on the last point, Dolores, I've heard that concern from a lot of people, even certainly going back to when I was first elected in 2001. This whole idea of Medicare reimbursement rates being so low that many seniors are have had a tough time finding a doctor who accepts Medicare. Now, in December, we passed a bill to raise Medicare reimbursement rates an additional 1% through the end of February, and also to avoid about a 30% payment cut to physicians that was scheduled to go into effect on January 1. Now, that is only in place till the end of February, and it was part of this whole negotiation that took place on payroll tax cut in December. So we need to address this physician payment and Medicare reimbursement issue before the end of February. I believe that we will. If anyone's following this, it's called the doc fix. It's how people talk about it, the doc fix. So look for Congress to really push hard to fix this Medicare reimbursement rate issue in the short term, and please engage with my office to let me know if this is a concern of yours, like Dolores is saying, that we need to take care of it. The second point I want to make about that is that as part of the Affordable Care Act, we made changes to Medicare reimbursement so that over time, Medicare will start paying based on quality of care, which tends to be higher in Washington State as opposed to just the quantity of care. This won't mean that anybody won't. It will not mean that people will not be getting care. It will only mean that physicians will now across the country will have to do a little bit better job of ensuring they're providing quality care, not just a quantity of care. And that should actually improve the situation in Washington State because we tend to have higher quality measures for seniors' health care. Finally, when it comes to fraud and Social Security and SSI, Dolores and others, I am against that too. And if there are specific cases, please bring those to my office so we can alert Social Security, get the groups like the General Government Accountability Office involved, or even the Inspector General of the Social Security Administration involved. So because fraud, any dollar that goes into fraud, one, is wrong, it's illegal, and it's a dollar that's taken away from our seniors in terms of benefits.
We're going next to John and Anacortes. Just as a reminder to everybody else, if you'd like to ask a question, just dial *3 at any point, and you'll be connected with a member of our staff. John, you're on with the Congressman.
Yes, Congressman Larsen. My name is John Adams in Anacortes. In your transportation bill comments, you did not mention our ferries, which is the largest auto ferry system in the world. Yeah, but our fleet here in Washington is the oldest of all the U.S. ferry systems. Can you get federal funding for ferry construction?
Hey, John, thanks for mentioning that. And you're right, I didn't mention it, and shame on me for not mentioning it, because I'm, in fact, a co-sponsor of the U.S. Ferries Investment Act. It's a bill that we hope to fold into the transportation bill that will increase the federal contribution to the development of ferry systems around the country. Washington State has not only the largest system by vehicles, it also has the largest system by passengers. So it's an important part of our transportation system, and this bill would rework the formula for funding ferry systems to take into account not just miles traveled, which helps other states, but also the numbers of people who travel both as passengers and the number of vehicles that travel by ferry. So I'm working with Patty Murray Senator Patty Murray on this. We were able to be successful in the last iteration of the bill. What this, again, results in is a formula that is a way to get dollars, your federal tax dollars, to the states by formula rather than by earmarks, but by formula in order to help with ferry construction and terminal development. It does not deal with operations, that is the cost of operating a ferry system. That's largely going to continue to be the responsibility of the state. But when it comes to terminal development, like in Anacortes, which is very important to redo that terminal, or ferry construction, these dollars will help. One caveat on that, folks, is that Washington State has a limitation that says the Washington State ferries need to be built in Washington State. As a result, Washington State can't compete directly for dollars that build the hulls, because it has to be open to anybody in the country to do that. But we have used dollars to help pay for turbine systems, sort of the guts, if you will, the mechanics of the ferries, and Washington State has competed for those dollars and been successful at that. So short answer, that's the long answer to John's question. The short answer is yes, and I'm doing something about it.
Great. Again, if you'd like to ask a question, just dial *3. We're going next to Millard in Bellingham. Millard, you are on with Congressman Larsen.
Hi, Congressman Larsen. Thank you very much for providing us this opportunity to meet with you. My question has to do with the transportation and infrastructure for the country. Yeah. I think it's a great idea to stimulate the construction industry, and it's something that we need to do. My concern is when we're already under a crushing deficit, how are we going to come up with the funds to pay for and stimulate these projects?
Yeah, Miller, thanks a lot for the question. The way we do it now is that it's paid for by the gas tax, the federal portion of the gas tax that you pay when you go to the pump. And it's $1 into the Highway Trust Fund and $1 out of the Highway Trust Fund. So it's a net zero impact on the deficit. And I am one who's been a proponent of ensuring that if folks are paying the gas tax, the federal gas tax, that it ought to be used for transportation improvements and not diverted into closing the deficit for other reasons. If you're paying the gas tax, that dollar that you pay ought to be going into a highway trust fund that then is used to help fund the federal portion of transportation projects that take place around the country, and including the projects that take place that occur in our corner of the country, like in Bellingham. Some of the transit improvements, some of the bus purchases that WTA has accomplished in the last couple of years have been using through the use of some of these federal tax dollars that are coming back home, federal gas tax dollars that are coming back home to make improvements at the border that have taken place in the last several years, like on Highway 543, paid for by your federal gas tax dollars coming back home. So, whereas Millard asked a really great question about, first off saying this is important for construction, but aren't we, hurting, making the deficit worse? The answer I would say is no, because that the gas tax dollar that you pay at the pump goes into a trust fund. There's a wall built around it, and only those dollars can only be used for transportation dollars, so people know that they're getting $1 worth out of transportation when they pay that gas tax. So it's a great question, and I appreciate a chance to clarify that.
Great. And just again, if you'd like to ask a question, just dial *3 at any point. We're going next to David in Marysville. David, you're on with Congressman Larsen.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting my call, Mr. Congressman.
Sure.
Okay. I have a bit of a dilemma here that I'm going through. The other day I had watched on the evening news a particular representative trying to get into the presidential office did approximately $42 million and paid 14% in taxation. I myself, being on SSDI and my spouse working, we probably do between $38,000 and $42,000 a year. Yet I pay 17%. Could you please give me some enlightenment or comment on? I don't think that's fair, but there must be something going on.
Well, I'm just doing the quick math here, and I think that you pay. It looks like one millionth. I'm sorry. You make one millionth of. I could have maybe 1/1000th of what Mitt Romney makes. So, and yet you pay a higher tax rate. This is an example of some fundamental unfairness that a lot of people feel that's going on in the country right now. My understanding of Mr. Romney's tax burden is that he largely gets his money from capital gains, which is taxed at a lower rate than earned income, that is income that you get from working in a job, and so that's how the tax rates work. I think it's a 15% tax rate, and so although he makes a lot, he pays a lower rate. Someone like Dave makes $38,000 to $42,000 and pays a relatively higher rate than Romney. Again, this gets to a fundamental question about fairness in our tax code. We need, in my view, to have a fairer tax code, a more progressive tax code. I have advocated for ensuring that as we try to approach a balanced budget, we need a balanced approach to that budget. And included in that is going back to the tax rates on the most fortunate Americans that we've had in the years of the last years of the Clinton administration, where we had higher tax rates for the richest Americans, but we still had high economic growth. Not that there's a relationship between the two, but the fact is the fact. We had higher economic growth even though we had higher tax rates on the richer Americans. And I think if we're going to have a balanced approach to balancing the budget, including having economic growth and including having spending cuts, we're going to have to raise revenue as well. And I think that's one area where we ought to go. I also think that for better or for worse, whether Mr. Romney and Mr. Obama like it this fall, they'll be both debating taxes and who's paying more or less. But it's a debate that America should always be having.
Great. Before we go to our next caller, I just want to remind everybody that if you'd like to ask a question of the Congressman, just dial *3. That's *3 on your keypad, and you'll be connected with a member of our staff. Next, we're going to Janice on Whidbey Island. Janice, you're on with the Congressman.
Yes. Thank you for being my representative, Mr. Larsen. I appreciate the votes that you've casted and stuff.
Thank you.
My problem is you keep talking infrastructure and everything, but are those contracts only going to be available to American companies, or are we going to be rebuilt by foreigners?
Thanks for the question. When it comes to transportation and infrastructure and the contracts that are let out, most of these are if there's a federal dollar involved. I can't say for sure, Janice, and I'll double check, but most of these are usually end up being local contractors doing local work. And that again creates jobs for local private sector engineers, local private sector contractors. So that's another, I think, benefit of passing a robust transportation bill, is that we get an opportunity to do what frankly has been a bipartisan approach for the last 30 years. Democrats and Republicans supporting a robust transportation bill that is paid for, getting back to Millard's question from Bellingham, that is paid for so that we can not only put people to work, local people to work, and local contractors to work, but doing work that we all need to have done, whether that's road improvements in Oak Harbor or county road improvements in Whidbey Island, or even for that matter, improving the Mukilteo Ferry Terminal for not just Mukilteo, but the commuters in the south end of Whidbey Island as well.
Great. Next, we're going to Elizabeth in Bellingham. Just before you go, Elizabeth, just a reminder, you can go *3 at any point to ask a question of the Congressman. We're about halfway through our call, so we still have some time for a few more questions. Elizabeth, you're on with Congressman Larsen.
Thank you. I hear that this congressman or you have put forth a bill, or you are jointly putting forth a bill. But how do you get those bills passed when we have a Republican-dominated Congress?
Thanks, Elizabeth. And this is kind of a question that gets into, is Congress broken? Are you guys really getting along? Can you really get along? And I know people are frustrated by Congress generally, seeming inability to work together on big issues. And I think, you should know I'm frustrated with that as well, as a member of Congress, but more importantly, as a guy from Arlington, Washington, whose family's been in this area near Arlington for over 100 years. I share your frustration with Congress, but there are examples where we work together. Let me give you a couple. There's been a lot made about how few bills have passed this particular Congress, and half of them, I think of 52 total or so, and half of them have named post offices or done some other things. Well, in the other half, there's a bill that I was a prime sponsor of and worked with Republicans to get it passed out of the House, and then we worked in the Senate to get it done, and the President signed it into law. And it's a bill that will actually help with business travel and help create jobs in the Pacific Northwest and other places of the country too. And as well, I worked hard in a bipartisan way to pass an update to our pipeline safety laws in this country, and that was an example of a bipartisan approach. There's a lot of bipartisan work that goes on in Congress. A lot of folks don't see it because it's not covered on the news, and I understand that. And so I can understand why people get frustrated by that, and I get frustrated by not enough bipartisanship. But there is some, and my view is always the same thing. It's like you increase your odds the harder you work. So you increase your odds of being successful in Congress the harder you work. You increase your odds of getting bipartisan things done the harder your work, and that's always been my commitment to people in the district. And then folks decide what they want to do come election time. But I will say this in defense of the institution, in defense of your institution of Congress. It may not be on the timeline people want, but over the last 230 years, on the big issues of the day, Congress eventually comes around to getting things done right. But it takes voters and it takes people who are staying interested in the success of their country and their government to make that happen. And I try to always encourage people to stay involved as a result.
Thanks. Before we go to our next caller, just one last reminder: you dial *3 at any point to be connected with a member of the staff to ask a question. We're going to Roxanne in Everett. Roxanne, you're on with the Congressman.
Oh, hi, Congressman Larsen.
Hello, Roxanne.
Greetings from the former PCO of Everett 67, a long time ago. Basically, like this lady said, well, she's concerned about SSI fraud. First of all, I'm on SSI. I'm not guilty of fraud, okay? But, I've told Governor Gregory this, you lay off a state worker, you lay off a school employee, Microsoft lays off some workers, and they collect unemployment unless, of course, you're like my friend Sareen, who's self-employed, and she can't collect unemployment. And so if you're going to lay off a worker, whether it's at a state level or school level or private sector, have the common decency to have the human resource department help that person get another job, rather than just having them keep on apply for unemployment benefits, which is also going to be, not going to help the economy either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Well, Roxanne, thanks for your comment, and it sort of underscores the the need to, so long as the economy continues to recover but not yet recovered, the need to have some help, some support to get people back on the feet, on their feet. I think finding a way to have a compromise on unemployment insurance extension is important, but knowing that we have resources in our community like the Workforce Development Council of Snohomish County, folks there who've been able to help people get back to work and get back on their feet is important. Human services at Snohomish County, the government of Snohomish County, can help people and can connect people to the right resources. Calling 211, the 211 program through United Way is a great resource for folks if they're needing to contact somebody about a specific human service need. And then, of course, you can always call my office in Everett or in Bellingham, and the information for that is online. But for Everett, it's 425-252-3188, and Bellingham is 360-733-4500. We can try to help connect you with some folks who can help if you need it. Thanks a lot.
Great. Next, we're going to Ryan in Lake Stevens. Ryan, you're on with the Congressman.
Yeah, hi, Congressman. I just wanted to know your feelings quickly on the SOPA and the PIPA laws that are before Congress or recently.
The bills have been pulled, and I support pulling those bills. I oppose SOPA. For those who don't know this, SOPA is a Stop Online Piracy Act, and PIPA is not just the name of Kate Middleton's sister, but also of the Protect IP Act. It's a Senate version of the Stop Online Piracy Act. I oppose both those bills in their current forms. I mean, we have to have strong efforts to curb piracy and protect intellectual property. That's a fundamental of creating jobs. It's also ensconced in Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. But SOPA and PIPA create unacceptable threats to free speech, which is ensconced in the First Amendment of our Constitution. And also, they create unacceptable barriers to access to the Internet. Now, I've heard from thousands of folks in Northwest Washington, I don't know if Ryan was one of them before last week, who are deeply concerned about the potential impacts of SOPA and PIPA. Online piracy is a serious problem. It costs U.S. businesses billions of dollars. It costs U.S. entrepreneurs millions of dollars. Government agencies, like our Department of Justice, need to be empowered to stop and to prosecute intellectual property thieves. But in doing so, it doesn't make sense to undermine freedom of speech or to jeopardize the free flow of information on the Internet. So I expect that Congress is going to go back to the drawing board and try to find a way to stop online piracy, but without encroaching on free speech rights. That may be a tough, a very thin wire to walk, but the outpouring of opposition to the existing SOPA and PIPA legislation was a real wake-up call to Congress, and people need to be sure that we're, when we're writing laws, trying to write laws, that we're doing our best to get them right the first time, maybe adjust them later, but get them right the first time. But I appreciate Ryan bringing this up because it's important. I want to let folks know that we can't undermine freedom of speech. We can't jeopardize the free flow of information on the Internet. We'll find a way to be sure that we protect freedom of speech, which is First Amendment, while also being sure that entrepreneurs can protect their intellectual property, which is Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution.
Great. Thank you, Rick. Next, we're going to Shannon in Oak Harbor. Shannon, you are on with the Congressman.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. Well, I'm one of those, my family is one of those families that has chronic unemployment as a problem. My son has moved back in with us as an adult, unemployed or underemployed. So I'm now the sole support, and I'm over 60 years old. My problem was when I went to the bank with an excellent credit rating and said it would be nice to readjust my mortgage payment to a little bit lower, it would allow me to have exactly what this economy needs, which is the money to go out and buy those things that my family needs.
Right.
And I was told, you're making your payment, so you don't need our help. Then I heard day before yesterday, Bank of America is deciding to back out of home equity loans entirely. As a family member of a family that has been in the construction business for years, when banks no longer want to help the middle class, the little guy that just wants to do a remodel or help them out, to put people back to work, to put money back. I spend my money. I put money back into the economy. I'm not saving it. I save a little bit, but you see what I'm saying here. My money goes into the economy.
Yeah.
And I want to know, what can we do when a bank as large as Bank of America essentially is saying, we can get the money from the Fed cheap. We don't need to loan money to middle-class people anymore. Our money is better spent borrowing it from the Fed or helping out big business. That's a real slap in the face to the working people of the United States. And I want to see some legislation that says banks need to help middle-class people. They need to help the working poor. They need to help the elderly. And I'm tired of seeing what's going on with banks just dumping on us. They get our federal money, they dump their debt on us, and then walk away clean.
Yeah.
So what I heard last night from the president was they're going to start doing something about that, and I want to know how you feel about that.
Yeah, well, with regard, thanks, Shannon. I appreciate the call and the concerns you've expressed, and something I've heard from a lot of folks. So that general theme about banks got bailed out and middle class got left behind, and that's a concern that a lot of folks have been expressing to me. And what can we do about it? Well, one thing just on the issue of your home and people like you who are paying off, but maybe are getting close to not being able to do that anymore. In the past, the existing program said, well, you have to be 3 months in arrears before you can take advantage of one of the refinancing programs through the Department of through Housing and Urban Development. Well, what the president said last night is they're going to put in place by executive order a program that says you don't have to be in arrears. You can be, it can be, close. If you're a responsible payer, you're making your payments, but you're really on that edge, then they want to be sure that we want to be sure we do what we can to reward that rather than rewarding people who made mistakes about getting the mortgage. So we'll do some work to figure out exactly what you can do. Meanwhile, I'd encourage you to call my office in Bellingham at 360-733-4500 and ask for Katrina specifically and see if there's something we can do on the housing front. On the other issue about Bank of America or other banks who are pulling back, we've seen that quite a bit. Some of these banks are holding on to their capital, and they're not willing to deploy that, if you will, not willing to put that into the economy. Frankly, it was too loose before, and now it's gotten way too tight. And I've talked along with other members to the FDIC, the regulator, to see if there's something they can do without talking about any specific bank or any particular situation, what the FDIC can do to get back in the business of encouraging banks to responsibly lend as opposed to irresponsibly lend or irresponsibly hold on to their dollars and not deploy them into our communities for job creation. There are programs to help businesses. There aren't a lot of programs, unfortunately, to help individuals. And so we're trying to communicate that as members of Congress to the FDIC in a way that helps them see where the economy is headed, that it is getting a little bit better, and therefore I think it makes it a little bit easier for banks to start lending again. So, in the short run, I'd just call my office. In the long run, let me look at this idea about legislation regarding banks and lending. Thanks.
Thanks, Congressman. Just a reminder, we have about 10 minutes left on our call. If you'd like to ask a question, you can dial *3 and you'll be connected with a member of our staff, and they'll be happy to take your question. We're next going to Daniel in Marysville. Daniel, you're live with Rick. Daniel, you're on the line? Okay, we're going to go ahead and jump to Michael in Custer. Michael, you're on the line.
Hello?
Michael, go ahead. You're on with the Congressman.
Okay, Congressman, good to talk to you. I'm doing pretty good. I got a couple of questions for you, and it's been kind of bothering me, and I'd like to have your stance on this.
Sure.
Number one is, my understanding is that you guys have an automatic 3.5% raise per year that you voted in or somebody else voted in many years ago, and I'm on Social Security. I have not had a pay raise this year I got one finally, but after two years of not having a pay raise, trying to keep up with the economy, even though they say it's not going, but it is. It's raising, so my money is depleting, not going up like yours. The other part of that question is, why are not the congressmen and their families having to go back on Social Security like all the rest of the citizens of the United States when they are released from their obligations to an employer or when they retire or whatever? I go from $60,000 to $3,000, let's say, a year. So, or 30,000 or 12,000, I think it is, something like that. Yeah.
Which and Michael, what's your just on that last point? What's your impression of what does happen, so I can clarify that?
Okay, my impression, or what I've been reading and stuff like that, you guys get in excess of six digits a year for doing what you're doing, which is like a CEO type of thing, which is fine because you do take on a lot of responsibility, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
However, when you retire, when it was first originally started in the United States, I do believe that the people went back to their jobs, whatever, and retired on their income or their Social Security, which we do now have. I would think that the congressman would be more than willing to go back because they have their own fund, they have their own medical, and we have to pay for that out of our own pocket at a very reduced rate from what we work for per year when we're working.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for the question and an opportunity, because I want to take the opportunity to dispel a few myths that hopefully will. It may not make Michael, you or others feel better, but there are some myths out there that are worth dispelling. But I can tell folks, if people want to be happy or mad at Congress, let's find out what the facts are and then go from there. For instance, on the automatic COLA, cost of living adjustment for members of Congress, it actually is in there. There's an automatic COLA adjustment for members of Congress, and I hope you'll be pleased to know that for the last I think two or 3 years, Congress has voted. Last 3 years, Congress has voted to stop that cost of living adjustment from going into place. So, again, Michael said, members of Congress make 6 digits. The salary of all members of Congress, except for like the Speaker of the House, is $173,000. That's a lot, and it's been frozen at that amount for the last 3 years because Congress has taken steps to freeze that and not have a cost of living adjustment because there is an understanding out. I mean, I certainly understand that people have been suffering the last several years because of this recession, and we're gonna take our haircut and take our buzz cut to be sure that we're taking some pain. But I got to tell you, members of Congress, they ought to be able to live on $173,000 a year and not complain about it. Some members do complain about it. That's not enough. I can't believe that they would do that. But Michael, we've stopped those COLAs, cost of living adjustments from going into place, and I have voted to stop those cost of living adjustments from going into place. I'm glad to hear that you did get your cost of living adjustment in Social Security. The challenge that has been there is that it's tied to inflation, an inflation rate that tends to be lower than the cost of living for a senior. And as a result, the COLA has been at 0, but this last year it went up, I think, a couple of percent, and that's at 3.5%, and that's been good news for you. With regards to Social Security and members of Congress do pay into Social Security since '83. The last reforms to Social Security, members of Congress have been required to pay into Social Security. There's a myth out there that members of Congress don't. Members of Congress do. It is taken out of my paycheck to go into Social Security. And so we are, upon hitting 65, or in my case, 67, I'm eligible to receive Social Security. But as a federal employee, which a member of Congress is, as a federal employee, we are eligible for a 401k plan, which I pay into and is matched by the federal government, as well as a pension. And but we're not eligible for that until after so many years of service and after a certain age. And it is not. There's a myth out there that members of Congress only have to work 1 year and then they get the salary for the rest of their life, even if they retire. That is not true at all. It's never been true in my lifetime. Certainly not true today. And as long as I'm in Congress, it won't be true in the future either. But those are some of the facts about it, as well as on health care. We do pay health care. We do pay in part of the premium for health care. Members of Congress do not get free health care. We're part of a larger pool of people, of federal employees. So we get the advantage of being in a larger pool, a larger purchasing pool for health care. But there's not a health care plan for members of Congress. It's part of being in a larger pool. We do pay premiums out of our pocket, and not 100%. I think it's 29%, which is about consistent with larger employers who offer health care to their employees. Sorry to rush through that. Folks have other questions and get back to you about some of these other issues. But Michael brings up a broader point. This is why people are frustrated with members of Congress. I only hope to give you what I believe are the facts themselves, and so you all can decide about what the truth is.
Thanks, Congressman. We're going to be going to our last question now. I just want to let everybody know that if we don't get to your question today, you can go ahead and stay on the line at the end of the call, and you're going to be able to leave a message for Rick that we'll be able to get back to you on. We're going to try one more time with Daniel in Marysville. Daniel, you're on the line?
Yeah, I think, actually, this is Ken, but is that the phone ringing?
Go ahead, Ken.
But I'm on Dan's phone, so I think that's why you got
There you go.
So what I wanted to ask the congressman about is every phone in the place is going off.
Just go ahead.
Sorry about that. I wanted to ask him what he thinks now, after having had a little bit of time to see and think about it. The National Defense Authorization Act had 2 sections in it. Some fairly impressive legal thinkers believe that Section 1021 has essentially repealed habeas corpus requirements for the country, and that to me is dramatic. I think the congressman needs to know that there are a lot of people who are actually fearful of the government itself now, and don't take any comfort when there's ambiguity about whether they could be disappeared simply for doing what people think they should be doing as citizens, which is criticizing the government and trying to make their input known. And when I wrote to the congressman about the National Defense Authorization Act, one of the things in his reply was that there is a after-the-fact bill called HB 3702, which I think the title is Due Process Guarantee Act.
Right.
And I read that, and all it says is that no one will be denied due process except as authorized by an act of Congress, which, of course, the Defense Authorization Act is. So that's really scant comfort. I'd like to hear what you think on that.
Yeah, Ken. So, Ken, you and I are going to disagree on the outcome of the National Defense Authorization Bill. The way I look at it, the detainee provisions in the earlier versions of the bill were much too broad. I'm a member of the House Armed Services Committee. I served on the conference committee. I fought to ensure that the detainee provisions were modified. The final language in the final act is very narrow, It does not affect any current law regarding military detention of citizens. U.S. citizens who are apprehended overseas are specifically exempted from mandatory military detention. Any American's right to habeas corpus upon detainment for anything by the FBI or anybody has not changed, nor does it affect the posse comitatus restrictions on military participation in civilian law enforcement. Detainees who are not American have the right to challenge their detention before a judge with representation. I don't know how we could have done a better job of narrowing this provision, of making it consistent with what the administration's position has done, fought for in courts, and won in courts. I appreciate the folks' concerns about habeas corpus, and I've been fighting this for the last, what year is it, 2012, last 5.5 years. So I'm with you, and I'm also co-sponsor of 3702. We may differ on the interpretation of that as well, Ken and others, but I'm going to continue to get us back to a position where where it's crystal clear that habeas corpus applies. People have the right to challenge their detention. I got to cut things off, and I apologize. I want to thank everyone for getting on the call today. If we didn't get your question, if you have any comments you'd like to share, please stay on the line as we end this call, because you have an opportunity to leave a voicemail message, and thank you all so much for participating. Brian?
Thanks, Congressman Larsen. Again, just to repeat what you said, if you'd like to leave a message or ask a question, you feel free to just stay on the line here as we end the call. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks again for joining this telephone town hall.